Okay, let me share my screen. Right. So AWS has got several storage services, correct? I mean, as I gave an overview of the different types of storage services, AWS has got different storage services. So what was the other storage service that we learned in our previous sessions? We did lab exercises also. Which one is that?
EBS.
EBS, perfect. EBS. EBS stands for Elastic Block Storage. Elastic Block Store. Okay. So while EBS is it's a block level storage, which offers an ability to create a volume that has that volume to an EC2 instance, so that the EC2 instance can use its underlying EBS volumes to store data, right? It's like your hard disk attached to your personal computer. Okay, so that's EBS. So there's another type of storage called S3. So S3 is basically the full form of S3 is Simple Storage Service. Okay, that's what S3 stands for, right? And it's an object storage, right? What is an object? I mean, for those who of you have learned object-oriented programming, what is an object? Can somebody say what an object is? In OOPS concepts.
Object can be any real-world entity that has a state, behavior, and some properties.
Sir, according
Excellent.
to it's instance
it's any real world
class.
object. Yeah, but in a more abstract terms, object is anything is an object. Correct? In more abstract terms, correct? And anything that you see is basically an object at the end of the day, correct? So that way, the scope of, so that way the scope of object is very, very wide. And, if you take, if you want to build a service, a storage service that can pretty much accommodate anything and everything under the sky, answer for that is S3. Okay, S3 is basically an object storage, which means that you can store anything in this. It can be anything, right? It can be a file, it can be a CSV, it can be a PDF, it can be a file of any extension, it can be a binary data. Okay, that's what S3 means, right? So that's where S3 is a very, very generic storage service. It's called simple storage service, right? Simple. I mean, you just store anything in this and retrieve it. And the best part of S3 is it provides 11 nines of durability, right? So what is durability? The longevity of the data storage. That's called durability. Okay. So that's where if you see, it has 11 nines, right? So usually the availability and durability, these are all measured in terms of percentages, correct? So now when you say availability of a particular service, usually the availability is 99.99%, which is 4 nines, or 99.9%, 3 nines, or 99.5%, correct? So now, given the design, the underlying design of a particular system, the availability is measured, correct? So when you say 99.99%, which means that for 99.99% of the time, the system is going to be up and running, which means you take a month. It's always a relative thing, right? I mean, we live in a relative world. It's always a relative thing. So for 99.99%, relative to what? Relative to the month. For a particular month or for a particular billing period, the service will be up for 99.99%, which means that there can be a few seconds of downtime or a few minutes of downtime, which is allowed within that entire month, within that entire period, right? That's what it means, right? So there's something called uptime calculator. So it's very, because all of you will actually start building services and start designing services, right? So that's where if you see, if you go for an uptime calculator, yeah, uptime.is, right? If you actually go there, you just give the, yeah, give this. If the agreed SLA is 99.99%, then you can have a daily downtime of 8 seconds, weekly downtime of 1 minute, monthly downtime of 4 minutes, 22 seconds, quarterly 13 minutes, yearly 52 minutes, 35 seconds, right? So this is the formula. Whereas if you go for another 9,
Not able to hear your voice, sir.
yeah, if you just go for
Voice
2 more,
getting
the
break,
voice
sir.
is breaking.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please give me a second. Okay, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, all right. So I think some process was fogging all the memory and CPU. I just killed it. Okay, all right. So now, so this is what 6 nines mean, right? 99.9999%, which can offer a quarterly about 7 seconds and yearly 31 seconds of downtime. So anyways, going back to our object storage. So here in this case, the data that is stored in S3, AWS offers an SLA of data durability. What is durability? Durability is how durable the data is, right? You will not have any loss of data, right? Which is about 99.99, which is 11 nines of data durability. And it's a very, very cost-effective way to store data, right? S3 provides very cheap and very, very cost-effective. You can store, petabytes of data in S3, right? And you can store, in fact, in one of the videos in the past, I was showing a truck which came in, right? Snowmobile, right? So the truck which came in, which can actually take petabytes of data from your data center and take it to the cloud, AWS cloud. Okay, so in fact, S3 is capable of storing that kind of petabytes of data on the cloud on AWS, right? So that's how massive scale S3 is, right? And S3 actually has got different types of use cases. These days, application developers use S3 very, very frequently, right? I mean, in order to store images, in order to store any static content related to their applications, store documents, right? And the best part of S3 is it uses an HTTP interface. It doesn't need any special protocols. So that way it is highly interoperable with a lot of systems because it uses just an HTTP protocol. You can just make an HTTP call and fetch an object from the S3. And you can just use the REST interfaces of S3 to work with the S3, right? Using get, put, post, and all that, using those HTTP methods. Okay, and S3 also is a global service. When I say global service, it stores the data in a region. But having said that, the namespace of S3 is global. Okay, so that way you create a bucket name. A bucket name is very unique. And each bucket name is unique, right? Once a bucket is created with a name, you cannot recreate that same bucket with the same name in any other region. But the data itself is stored in a specific region in an availability zone. And internally, what AWS does is when you create an S3 bucket and store some objects inside that, those are replicated within the availability zones, right? But it does not cross the region. If it is, for example, in Mumbai, it stays within Mumbai, but within Mumbai, there are 3 availability zones. So what AWS does is they keep copies of your bucket and objects in different availability zones. In case of an AZ failure or in case of some other issues, they quickly restore this data and your copy of your data is available as a backup. Okay, so if you see this, this is just a simple example of various different use cases that is possible with S3. So you have got S3. This is the symbol of an S3 because in S3 you create a bucket. Okay, that's why you see the bucket symbol. A folder. It's probably a high-level folder, right? So that's the way you can look at it. And once you create a bucket, you can store objects into it. You can create other multiple subfolders, and you can create objects. You can store files, and you can do anything. It's like the Google Drive for the cloud, but it's much more than that, right? I mean, in terms of its applicability and use cases, it is used in a lot of other things. That is where you store the data. When you create a bucket, you specify the region, the access controls, who can access the bucket, and management options such as you want versioning and things like that, and upload any amount of data, right? There's no limit. When you create a bucket, it's not going to ask you for what is the size of the bucket. It is not going to ask you. You can keep storing any amount of data into it. It's elastic in nature. Okay, and you can control access to the data, and you can optimize the cost with storage classes. You want to archive data, right? For several years, for several decades, you want to archive the data. Then you can actually define the storage tiers in such a way that you can transition the data from your main standard storage class to a more cheaper storage class. That way, the cost is probably a 1/10 of the original cost. As such, S3 is a low-cost storage. Even within that, you can choose different storage classes, which will even further optimize your overall cost of storage. So that way you can archive petabytes of data in different storage tiers, and then you can safely protect the data for decades or for centuries. And you can replicate the data to any region, right? And you can access it from on-premises or from VPC as well, from within your VPC, right? Since it's a fully managed service, you don't have to manage any infrastructure for S3. All that you need to do is to go use the console or use the API or CLI or SDK, create a bucket, define the characteristics of the bucket, and start storing the data into it, right? You don't manage any infrastructure here. You don't have to manage any servers. You don't have to manage any EC2 instances, nothing of that sort, because it's a fully managed service. And what sort of data that you can store? You can, as I said, object, right? Anything. When I say object in abstract terms, it can be anything and everything. It can be an analytics data, right? So you may use data coming from, say, databases, right? You can use those analytics data. You can store log files. All of us know what log files are, right? Log files are generated when you build applications. When you deal with systems, you generate a lot of log files. You can store those. You can store application data such as CSVs or any sort of images, documents, right? Anything, right? You can store those. You can store videos and pictures. Okay, and in fact, today a lot of media houses use S3 as their storage, right? And they process the video files with different bit rate, with a different content classification. They just use it to process the different frames per second. And when the user is streaming appropriately, the appropriate video content is pulled out and it is streamed on the user's device, either mobile or TV or whatever. Backup and archival, right? I mean, it is used for backing up your data, right? You have your main data stored in the EC2 or any database data that you have. You can actually take a backup of your actual data, and then you can use S3 as a place where you can store the backup and then retrieve that later. Okay, you can also use S3 like that. It's not only for cloud, it is even for on-premise, right? On-premise, you've got some applications and you want to back them up on cloud because you're short of storage and on-premise. So you can upload all of that into S3. And data analysis, right? I mean, these days, AI and ML analytics is kind of prevalent everywhere, and a lot of applications, a lot of businesses are, focusing a lot of innovation on AI ML. But for AI ML and analytics, you need a lot of data, correct? And you need a lot of data corpus. You need a lot of, training to happen on that data, right? So now S3 offers you a platform where you can store all that data and train your data on top of it and store models in S3, and use those models and applying it in real time on real-time data and making predictions using this data for algorithms such as regression, classification, okay, and using some algorithms such as decision tree algorithm, because decision tree algorithm needs data, right? So that's where in AI ML space, there's a lot of data is required, and S3 is the standard de facto service which is used in the AI ML space as well. Okay, so that's basically the overview of what an S3 is, and here data lake, right? I mean, so these days, I mean, in those olden days, maybe 15 years back, 20 years back, there used to be a lot of data warehouse systems. Okay, every organization, every enterprise had a data warehouse. A data warehouse is nothing but information comes in the transactional systems, and it is also sent to a data warehouse for the sake of reporting, analytics, business intelligence, and so on and so forth, right? But then that whole paradigm changed. Okay, today you have something called data lakes. Okay, a data lake is nothing but it's a common pool of information, raw, either in the raw format or in the processed format. It is stored, and systems and applications make use of that data from the data lake to apply intelligence, to derive intelligence using algorithms, using some machine learning models, right? Or for high performance computing. Okay, that's called the big data, right? I mean, all of us have come across the big data space, right? So big data, like where you use Hadoop, Spark, and technologies such as. So in AWS, S3 is used to build a complete data lake, right? You can use S3 as one of the key ingredients to build a complete data lake on cloud. And you can use S3 for backup and restore of critical data. And you can archive data at the lowest cost, as I said, right? I mean, you're starting a business and you are generating a lot of data. And after say 2 years, you want to archive the data. You can actually archive all the data into S3 with very, very minimal cheap cost, 1/10 of the original cost. And you can run cloud native applications. You can build cloud native applications like mobile applications, right? And somebody just said he's building a Android application. You can use S3 for your application, right? To store images, to store data, pull data. And these are some of the customers, who are using S3. If you see here, NASDAQ. Okay, so NASDAQ is is one of the indexes in the US. NASDAQ scaled a 70 billion records a day on S3. Okay, it's a huge scale. And good part about S3 is it qualifies for a free tier. Okay, and you can do a lot of things with S3 within a free tier. I think it gives you about 5 GB of data in the free tier. Okay, and the pricing of S3 is also quite cheap. It's not that expensive. Okay, if you see here, for a standard S3 tier, there are different tiers in S3, right? As I said, each one offering different performance levels and different price points. For the first 50 TB, it is 0.025 per GB per month. For the next 450 GB, it is it's how much it is? Yeah, it's 1.1 cent less, right? Or 0.01 cent less. It's 0.024 per GB. So then over 500 TB per month, it is 0.023 per GB. Okay, then you have something called intelligent tiering, which can automatically understand the usage pattern of your objects in the S3 bucket, and it can automatically transition it from one tier to another tier. Okay, and there's something called Glacier, S3 Glacier. It is used for archival. So you see the price difference between the standard and the Glacier, right? Standard is 0.025, whereas Glacier is 0.005, 1/5 of the price. And there's something called Deep Glacier, Deep Archive, right? S3 Glacier Deep Archive, where you can store long-term data archived. Either it's accessed probably once or twice a year, and it can be restored within 12 hours. So if you see here, it is 0.002 per GB per month. Okay, it's almost like 10 times cheaper than the standard tier. So these are different types of classifications that S3 offers with a different price point. This is like the beauty of AWS is the way the whole platform is engineered. It's basically an engineering marvel, correct? Look at the kind of choices that AWS offers always, right? It's not a one size fits all, correct? Because they know that it is not one size doesn't fit everyone, right? I mean, for us, when we buy our footwear, I mean, we don't go for one single size, right? Because all of us have a different size of foot, right? So obviously one size doesn't fit everyone, right? So similarly here also, AWS has engineered it in such a way that, they've given wide variety of service offerings so that, people, enterprises, customers can choose the right one that fits their bill, correct? In terms of the requirements that they have, in terms of the amount of money that they will be able to spend, that they can afford. Right. So from that standpoint, it's beautiful that there's so much of options that is given, and as engineers, right, as cloud engineers, it is important for you to understand all these options very, very clearly, right? So that tomorrow when you are on helping your customers, right, helping your clients, you will be able to choose the right one, and you'll be able to advise them saying that please go for this, right? So this gives you the maximum availability. This gives you the maximum price advantage, right? You'll be able to clearly suggest them and advise them on what is needed. Okay, all right. So that's basically a very high level view of S3. So let's just quickly get into the documentation of S3. Just go to the public documentation of S3. Okay, before that, let's just watch a small video about S3, right?
Amazon Simple Storage Service, S3, is an object storage service that offers industry-leading scalability, data availability, security, and performance. In this demo, we're going to learn how to create and configure our first Amazon S3 bucket, how to upload, view, copy, and delete objects.
Okay.
And finally, how to...
Okay, that's okay. This anyways we are going to do. I thought it will be a use case driven video. No issues. Okay, all right. So let me just pull up the public documentation.
Can I ask one question, sir?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Without EC2, I can take backup direct S3.
Yes.
Copied.
Yes. If you have data running in EC2 on EC2, so for example, you have hosted a database.
No, sir. Actually, I'm not. I don't have EC2. I have my PC backup is there. So can I directly copy to S3?
Yes, you can. It's like your Google Drive for cloud. You'll be able to copy it directly to S3 without an EC2 instance. Yeah.
Sir, we have created snapshots, sir. Those also we can do backup, no, sir?
No, the snapshot backups don't go to S3.
Okay.
I mean, it does not, of course, it goes to S3, but it goes to an S3 bucket that AWS manages. So you will not have access to those.
Okay. Okay.
But having said that, if you want to take any backup of your files inside your EC2 instance, you can as well copy it to S3. You can back them up into S3.
Okay.
Okay, so what is S3? S3 is an object storage service that offers industry-leading scalability, data availability, security, and performance. Customers of all sizes and industries, right? So that's where I was saying one size doesn't fit all. So customers of all sizes and industries can use S3 to store and protect any amount of data for any range of use cases, such as data lakes, websites, mobile applications, backup, restore, archive, enterprise applications, IoT devices, and big data analytics. Amazon S3 provides management features so that you can optimize, organize, and configure access to your data to meet your specific business, organizational, and compliance requirements, right? And these are some of the features of S3, such as the storage class. As I said, it provides you different storage classes, starting from standard, okay, frequent access, save cost by storing infrequently accessed data in S3 standard, infrequently accessed. S3 standard -IA means which is infrequently accessed. So what AWS does is behind the scenes, when you create a bucket with S3 standard infrequently accessed, it actually creates that bucket in an actual storage, in a physical storage, which is of low cost. Okay, that's how they are able to meet the price point that you're looking at. And there's something called S3 one zone infrequently accessed, which means that the data is stored only in one single availability zone. It's not stored in multiple availability zones. And archive data at the lowest cost in S3 Glacier. Okay, like S3 Glacier has got 3 different: instant retrieval, flexible retrieval, and deep archive, right? So deep. So starting with S3 standard is the higher most price. S3 Glacier Deep Archive is the lower most price. Okay, and the storage management in S3 provides multiple different lifecycle policies, right? So you can actually, the way you can do it is, say for example, you have built an application and users upload files through the application, and you're basically using S3 to store those files, right? And you want to keep those files only for, say, 48 hours, right? Or 1 month or 15 days. So you can set a lifecycle policy on the bucket saying that any object which is greater than 48 hours or which is greater than 30 days can be deleted, right? You can create those, or it can be moved to Glacier. It can be archived. Okay, you can create those lifecycle policies, which are very, very powerful. And you can lock an object so that, you know, so that nobody deletes it or overwrites it. you can replicate the objects from one bucket to another bucket. So you can use that for replication, for high availability and things like that. Anyways, it's highly available. But if you want to achieve a disaster recovery where you want to store my data is in say Mumbai region, I want to store a copy of my all data in Singapore region. You can replicate it in Singapore region and you can use it. Batch operations is for used for doing bulk level of operations on objects, such as bulk copy, bulk replication, and things like that. And access management, it provides you very good security, such as, since these are HTTP based, it uses a HTTP based protocol. You can actually allow an object to be made public, right? Anyone and everyone will be able to access, because you're going to have a URL, something like this, right? https:// So anyone will be able to access it on the internet. So you can actually block any public access. You can use IAM to granularly manage the permissions of the bucket, permissions of the objects, and you can create bucket policies. You have some access control lists within S3 to manage the permissions at a granular level. You can define an object ownership, who owns that particular object. And you can also use Lambda. We're going to learn Lambda later on, but you can use Lambda to deal with the event-driven approach of S3, right? So for example, you are building an application. So somebody uploads an image, okay, because or somebody uploads a video, correct? And assume, you're building a YouTube type of an application for the internet, right? To store videos and, stream videos. It's a video streaming service that you're building. Somebody uploads a new video. And as part of the process, you want to ensure that the video contains only appropriate content as per your policies. It does not have any inappropriate content. So in such cases, what you can do is you can use a Lambda function. Lambda function is basically a function as a service. So whenever a new video gets uploaded to an S3 bucket where the content creators upload these video files, immediately a Lambda function can trigger, pull this object, the video file, it runs it through the content check process workflow. And then if it is approved, then it goes ahead and approves it and uploads this video, makes it available on your YouTube. Right? So you can use that for processing the data, notifications of events, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are some of the patterns that you can make use of. Okay, and for analytics and insights, S3 offers features to help you gain visibility into your storage usage. Right, you can actually use Storage Lens to understand a lot more about how you are using the storage, how much of data that you have stored, analytics about how your data objects are used. Okay, and it provides a strong consistency, right? Where Amazon S3 provides strong read after write consistency for put and delete requests in your S3 buckets. Because only after you, so what are the HTTP methods? Can somebody say? There are multiple methods that are there from HTTP. If you have built APIs, if you have worked with HTTP methods. It's a basic interview question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. HTTP
Good morning.
methods are get method, put method, post method,
delete.
Okay, good, great. So, yeah. So read about this, okay? Even you can use the W3 schools. W3 schools is also good. Okay, so these are all some of the methods of HTTP. get, post, put, head, delete, patch, and options. Okay. So these are some of the methods. You'll have to learn these, and you have to at least explain some of these, right? They may ask you, explain the post method. Okay, these are some of the basics. You need to understand these. Okay. So after the object is put and delete, I mean, it's only like available after the read after write consistency, a strong read after write consistency. Okay, so let's look at some of the basics of S3, right? Buckets. A bucket, as I said, is the container that stores any object in S3. Okay, that's the top level container. Okay, you can store any number of objects in a bucket and can have up to 100 buckets in your account. And also you can ask for an increase of the bucket limit. You can put a request through service limit quota, or you can reach out to the support and they'll increase it. Every object is contained in a bucket. For example, if an object's named photo/puppy.jpg is stored in the doc-example-bucket in the US West region, then it is addressable using https://bucket name, which is doc-example-bucket.s3.us-west2, which is the region, .amazonaws.com/photos/puppy.jpg. Okay, this photos that you see is basically a folder inside the bucket, right? It's called the prefix actually. So this is how the object is addressable. Okay, and look at it. I mean, so this is a HTTPS URL, which can be accessed from anywhere, right? It's a global service. That's why it's called a global service. It can be accessed from anywhere. So the moment what this returns is it returns the actual image file of this puppy.jpg. Okay, so when you create a bucket, you enter a bucket name and choose the AWS region where the bucket will reside. After you create a bucket, you cannot change the name of the bucket or its region. Bucket names must follow the bucket naming rules. It has a certain set of nomenclature. You can also configure a bucket to use versioning, right? You can enable versioning on a bucket so that objects of the same name, multiple versions are maintained. Okay, and there's an S3 namespace at the highest level, right? So because this bucket name that you see, the way it works is there's a namespace that is created and DNS record is added for that bucket name. So you'll be able to use the HTTPS URL. So this is the way you can actually pull an object from a bucket. Objects are the fundamental entities stored in S3. Objects consists of object data and metadata, actual data itself, right? The object data and the metadata. Metadata is a set of name value pairs that describe the object, such as, it has some sort of a type, right? I mean, every object will have some type. So type is one metadata, right? So it's basically include some default metadata such as date modified, standard HTTP metadata, content type. So one thing that you need to remember is while it's a storage service, but the interface to this entire storage service is HTTP. Okay, that's the reason you have to always remember the HTTP based storage service. Okay, and key, right? An object key is a unique identifier for an object within the bucket. Every object in the bucket has exactly one key. The combination of a bucket, object key, and optionally version ID uniquely identifies each object. So you can think of Amazon S3 as a basic data map between, how many of you know Java or have learned Java? So what is a map in Java? What is a Java map? No?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah.
A map is an object that maps key to values in Java, sir.
Perfect. Excellent. So it's a very similar basic data map between a bucket plus key plus version, okay, and the object itself. Then, as I said, it supports versioning, can have a version ID. There's something called a bucket policy with which you'll be able to use IAM, create an IAM policy on a bucket to grant access permission to your bucket and the objects within it. Only the bucket owner can associate a policy with a bucket. The permissions attached to the bucket applies to all of the objects in the bucket that are owned by the bucket owner. Again, access control list is very similar. You can use access control list to granularly access permissions, control the permissions. Access points, just leave it for now. Consistency model, you can leave it for now. Don't want you to hound you with a lot of information at this point in time. Okay, and there are REST APIs for S3. You can use these REST APIs to interact with S3. Okay, all right. So that's basically an introduction to S3. So now let's just jump into console. Let's just get into the console, and in the console, I'm just going to go to Mumbai region. Okay, and here from the services, just type S3. You'll get S3, just go to S3. Okay, and the moment you go to S3, one thing that you would have noticed is it immediately shifts to the global. Because it's a global service, you won't be able to select a region. Similar to IAM, because S3 is a global service. Unlike EC2 or any other service, VPC, which is a regional service, but S3, IAM, these are all global services. CloudFront, these are all global services. Okay, but having said that, when you create a bucket, that bucket resides in a region physically. Okay, if you see that bucket actually resides in a region physically. Okay, and these are the buckets that I have. I have about 12.3 MB of total storage, and I have about 106 objects. Average object size is 118.5 KB. Okay, so now how do I create a new bucket? So out here, just go to create a bucket, and here you can give new bucket, just give a name. What happens is if the bucket is available, it will allow you to create, but I think this bucket name is it will not be available. Let's see, let's try and Asia Pacific Mumbai is the region where I'm creating this bucket. So you can select any region and create a bucket. But in this case, you go ahead and select Mumbai because we want our bucket to be in Mumbai. So then object ownership, just leave it default for now, right? And here also block public access settings, just leave it default for now. Versioning, just disable it for now. And you can add a new tag saying name my RPL 2021 demo bucket is the name that I'm giving. Encryption, you can also encrypt the data, right? Bucket and all the contents of the bucket. So, okay, let me just go ahead and create this bucket. Oops, see, it says bucket with the same name already exists, but where does it exist? It does not exist in my account. Okay, open another window. If I go here, so I don't have a bucket named new bucket, but someone else has created a bucket called new bucket, and I can't use it, right? So because it's already used. Because the reason being, when you access a bucket or when you access objects in the bucket, how do you access them? You access it like this with this using this URL, correct? So now what does this URL has? URL has HTTPS colon subdomain of the whole thing, right? .s3.amazonaws.com. This subdomain that you see, it's a unique one, right? So you can't have multiple subdomains with the same name, correct? So this is the namespace. This is the bucket name, which is the namespace. This namespace has to be unique. That is the reason AWS will not allow you to create a bucket with the same name. You can give one. One also already exists. Two already exists. Three already exists. Four already exists. Five exists. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay.
Sir, can't we use special characters?
Okay, you have to see this naming convention. 3 to 63 characters long. Must consist only of lowercase characters, numbers, dots, and hyphens. No other special character. Must begin and end with a letter or a number. It can't begin with a dot and the hyphen. So it can have only a dot and hyphen. Okay, so now I will say my RPL 2021 hyphen bucket hyphen 1. This I'm sure nobody would have taken. It's a unique name. Okay, and say create the bucket. Yes, it's successfully created. My RPL 2021 hyphen bucket hyphen 1. Right? So now you can actually go inside that and you can upload objects into it, right? So what we can do is, let me just go ahead and create some objects. So let me just go. I will create a new file. I'll just create a simple text file. New text file. That's it. I will just have only one line. I will save it. Okay, I'm just going to put it in my RPL folder, 2021 assignments folder. I will just say new file.txt and save it. I can just go click on upload, add files. I can go to this. I can go to this new file.txt, select this, open. Yeah, this file is added here. You can add more files if you want. And destination is this. And just say upload. Yeah, it's uploaded. Yeah, the file is uploaded here. New file.txt is uploaded here. Okay, so now if you want to say download this file, I can just select that file. It will give me all the metadata about this file. Okay, now who's the owner? It's basically an object. Okay, you have to call it as an object. Because at the end of the day, anything and everything is an object, right? You can also store, okay, let me take a binary file, okay? Where do I search for binary files? Okay, let me just search a binary file and come back on the screen. Just give me a second, just filling it out.
Sir, we can use PPK file as binary file.
Anything, you can use anything. Yes, you can use PPK, but PPK is not a binary file. It's basically a text file. It's a simple text file. Okay, I'm just going to choose a zip file. Okay, I'm just going to choose a zip file and use that zip file and just upload it, right? Because the zip file is also a binary file at the end of the day. Okay. So let me share the screen back. Okay, so I have a zip file which is called pipelines.zip. Let me actually upload that zip file. I'll say upload, add files, pipelines.zip. Just upload it. Okay, so then I can actually put an image inside it. Okay, so let me just download some image from somewhere, right? Okay, I'll just download this. Image from somewhere. Where do I go for image? You go to Google. Images. Yes, beautiful image. I'll just download this image. I will save images. I will just say image one. Just web. It's called some WebP image. I don't know what is that format. Okay, so that's also there. I can just store that image also inside this. Upload, add files, WebP.image. Yeah. So like this, you can store anything in S3. Right? And it's like you can also put a full folder, dump an entire folder into S3. Okay. So now let's closely look at a few things in the context of your assignment for today. Okay. So we have created a bucket and we have created a simple text file, hello world.txt, and we have uploaded it. And okay, so now let's look at the permissions, right? So now I have a new file.txt or hello world.txt, right? I can also rename this. Let me just go ahead and rename this. Rename object. I can just say hello world. Yes, that's fine. So it's hello world.txt. So now, if you see this, this is the URL to access my object. This is my object URL. As I said, https:// bucket name, just my RPL 2021-bucket-1 dot s3 dot ap-south-1 dot amazonaws.com, right? Okay, so by the way, on the domain naming convention, let me check how many of you know what the domain naming convention is. So this whole thing that you see, right, from .com, .amazon AWS, .https and all that, what is it called? It's an interview question. Not only that, right? You take anything. You take anything for that matter. You even take this www.restapitutorial.com. What is this called?
FQDN.
URL.
Domain name, sir.
Domain name, sir. Domain name.
DNS name, sir.
Name with URL.
Okay, so FQDN.
Domain name, sir. That is host name, sir.
Domain name. Domain name, host name. What else?
It's an IP address, but we call it using domain name.
Okay,
DNS,
what else?
DNS it's converted to host name to IP address to host name. That's why it is showing reflecting to .com.
Okay. Okay, what else? Okay, let me spend a couple of minutes.
Definition of a valid set of values, sir.
Okay. Okay, so now you have this, right? https://www.restapitutorial.com, right? Okay, so now if you look at the way the DNS resolution happens, right? It actually starts from here. Okay, then after this, you will have some slash and some path. Something you'll have some path. So now what the resolution does is it first picks up this. Okay, it first picks up this and then it searches. I mean, it can be like .com, .edu, .in and whatnot, right? .io, so many, this thing will be there here. And then what it does is then it takes this. Okay, this is the domain name. It takes this domain name. So then after that, whatever is there before that, correct? That's called the subdomain. Okay, so this is the domain name. This anything that is before that is basically a subdomain, which is part of this domain and either represented in the form of a CNAME or in the form of an Apex record or whatever it is, right? So that's how the DNS actually differentiates it. Okay. So then what it does is it actually takes the rest of it and then it tries to match the respective record and it tries to resolve the DNS for that. Okay. So from that perspective, if you see, you have this bucket name, right? So let me take this whole thing. This is my object URL. You can read more about the DNS resolution. I'll give you some pointers. How DNS resolution works. Yeah, search for this, right? So then you will get, how the DNS resolution works. When you open your browser and type in www.example.com, it queries DNS servers to resolve the name. Each query sends a message, contains 3 pieces of information. A specific DNS domain name, such as FQDN of this. Then the query type, it's a record or a CNAME or NS or whatever it is. And then specified class for the DNS domain name, such as the internet or what it is, right? So this is how the DNS query actually gets resolved through a DNS cache. There's something called a top level domain, TLD. Okay. Yeah, there's a root name server and there's a top level domain. Okay. In this case, example.com, .com is called the top level domain, TLD. It's called the TLD. I mean, go through this. It's very interesting. Okay. And it's an interview question, by the way. Trust me, 100% of interviewers ask this. Explain DNS resolution. If you don't know, please read through it or start learning how DNS resolution works. Okay, anyways, coming back to this. So now this is the thing. If I take this and if I split it, so this is the top level domain. Okay, and this is the domain name. Amazon AWS.com is the domain name. Anything before that is basically a it's either a CNAME or a subdomain. Okay, so now it has multiple pieces, right? So AP South one is the region. .S3 is the service name, and then this is your bucket name. Okay, and / hello world.txt. So what it does is, at the end of the day, the piece of software that is actually running in Amazon AWS.com basically resolves this particular. So when the DNS gets resolved to this particular server, what this server will do is this will pull the object from this bucket name, my RPL 2021 bucket 1, as per the permissions that is allowed or denied. And it will pull this object called hello world.txt, and then it will respond it back using the HTTPS protocol. That's how it works. Okay, so now what I can do is I can just copy this object URL. I can go to a different browser window and do it. I will get an access denied because I have not given any access for this bucket or for this object. Okay, so now what permissions do I have to give? Let's review that. If I go back to my bucket and go to permissions, there is something called block public access. This is on, which means that if you read this very clearly, public access is granted to buckets and objects through access control list bucket policies, access point policies, or all, in order to ensure that public access to all your S3 buckets and object is blocked. Turn on block all public access. These settings apply only to this bucket and its access points. AWS recommends that you turn on block public access, but before applying any of these settings, ensure that your applications will work correctly without public access. If you require some level of public access to your buckets or objects within, you can customize. Say, for example, you're building a website, right? And you have images, CSS, JavaScript, and everything stored in a S3 bucket. You can't turn off the block public access, right? Because the moment you turn on block public access, then the access to your images, CSS, JavaScript, and all of those will be lost, right? And publicly, nobody will be able to access your website, right? So because any user who is coming on internet will be an unauthenticated user, right? I mean, you'll have to at least show the login page to that user, right? Then you allow the user to log in to access your data. Okay, so that's what this block public access means, right? So now let's look at the step 5, right? Make the S3 bucket policy bucket public by going to the bucket permissions, uncheck block all public access, right? So that's what we're going to do now. Go here, edit this. I'm going to uncheck this and save. It's going to ask you to confirm. Just say confirm. Okay, so now the bucket is a public bucket. I mean, there's no block public access restriction enabled on my bucket, which means potentially my bucket and its contents can become public. Anyone can access it. Okay, so now let's go to the next step. Yeah, so now let's go back and let me go ahead and refresh this one, right? Hello world.txt. I refresh this, I still get access denied. Now you may wonder, so I've changed the bucket permissions to remove block all public access, but still why is it not working? No, it is not enough if you do it only at a bucket level. You also have to do it at an object level. So now if you look at the object, click on hello world.txt and you go to permissions. It's not if you see everyone public access is not there. Okay, so now what you have to do is you have to make this object public. So what you can do is you can do it two ways. Either you go inside that object and go here and you can either edit the metadata or you come out, right? So here, select this object and click on actions. Okay, I think I did not enable ACL, I believe. Okay, let me just come back. Let me open a different bucket. Create a new bucket. Create a bucket. This time it's bucket 2. ACL is enabled. You have to select ACL enabled and then just say create bucket. Yeah, so bucket is created. Next in bucket 2, upload add files, new file.txt, upload, close, go to bucket, edit, disable block all public access, save the changes, confirm, go to objects, select this object, actions, make public via ACL. Okay, it's going to ask you for a small confirmation saying that public read access is enabled and not blocked by block public access settings. Anyone in the world can access the specified objects, right? So just make it public. So once you make it public, the object is public, right? Now if you click this and go to permissions, yeah, it has a read public. Okay, so now if I go back and select this object, open this URL, come back here and paste it. So it's getting a new text file, correct? New text file. Okay, so that's how the permissions work, right? But one thing that you need to do while you create the bucket is, let me add that setting also. Yeah, give a unique name to it. Enable create a bucket, object ownership, under object ownership, enable, ACLs is enabled. Select ACLs enabled. Option and keep all the other options default. Okay, so that's what you need to do. This is one additional thing that you need to do. Okay, so then after that, you'll be able to change the setting of bucket by removing block all public access. And then you can upload an object and make public via ACL. So that's basically, earlier it used to be make public, but now it's make public via ACL. That's the setting. Actions, yeah, make public via ACL. Okay, that's the setting that you need to do. And then once you make the change the thing, then you copy the object using that object's unique URL. Okay, and then you can enable it. So now that's on the permissions of a bucket and permissions of an object. Now, similarly, you can also enable versioning on your bucket, right? So how you enable versioning on the bucket? By going to management or while creating a bucket itself. But you can just go to the management. Sorry, properties, not management. You can go to the properties and on the bucket properties and then click on bucket versioning. Just enable it. Right? Just from suspend, just make it enable and save it. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll just change the file, new file.txt. I'll add updated version. I will save it. So now what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and upload the same object again, once again. It's just modified, correct? I'll just upload the same object once again. Yeah, so it's just going to, you'll think that it's overwritten, but it's not overwritten. The current object is, if I just go ahead and refresh it here, it will go away because when a new version is uploaded, the settings will go away, the permissions will go away. So you have to again reinstate the permissions to the object once again. So when you have to go, click on make public via ACL and make it public. So once that is done, so now if you go ahead and refresh, yeah, see, you see this new text file and updated version, right? And even all of you will be able to access this. I'll ping this URL in the chat. anyone will be able to access this URL through a browser, through your browser. So you're able to access the, as long as you have internet connection, you'll be able to access this. Okay, and now let's look at this object and look at the versions of this object. See, we have two versions. One was created at 951, the other one is updated at 955. This is 15 bytes, this is 31 bytes. This is the current version. And similarly, you can add any number of versions of this particular object. So it will maintain all those versions. Okay, so that's so this is the this is what I want all of you to do today, right? So one is just read through the S3 fundamentals of S3, and there's also a blog on S3. This is Jayendra Patil. It's very nice. You can just read through this. Gives you all basics of S3, and then complete this lab exercise for today. Create a bucket, play around with the bucket, upload some objects, enable versioning, change the permission, see if you're able to access it or not. Okay, so once you complete this today, tomorrow we will get into more advanced S3. Okay, bucket policies, right? So how do you control S3 using IAM? Bucket policies of S3 using IAM, right? So how do you basically do that? So this is the bucket policy. You can author an IAM policy, what we learned in yesterday's class. You can actually put that here and control the access to the bucket in a more granular fashion. So we're going to read about, learn about that. Okay, and then the next topic, we're going to use CloudFront. CloudFront is a global CDN service, content delivery network service. So there we are going to use S3. So that's how I'm linking each and every topic. It's like a peeling the layers of onion, correct? And so for CloudFront, you need to know S3, right? And once you know S3, then it's easy for you to understand how CloudFront works. Right? We're going to look for a lab session on the CloudFront. Okay, so I'm going to give this assignment to you today. So please get into your breakout rooms and please do this assignment. And I'll see you all tomorrow. So learn about S3 because S3 is a very, very important topic. Okay? It's quite easy as well. It's not very difficult. You just need to understand the concepts. And if you're able to talk about S3, 100% you'll be through your interviews. Okay, I've just given the assignment in the chat window. Please download it and please get into your conference of the breakout rooms and start learning and start doing this assignment for today. Okay, so thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks, Sai Krishna, Sairam. Thanks, mentors, Sairam.
Thank you, Anna, Sairam. Bye.